And now for the final awardee of the night, I'd like to introduce James Gorman, who will present the CED Leadership Award to Ronald Hanley. James became Morgan Stanley's CEO in 2010 and the company's chairman in 2012. Before joining Morgan Stanley, he held many positions at Merrill Lynch, and he and Ronald Hanley were part of the McKinsey Mafia. Outside of Morgan Stanley, he is on the boards of the Partnership for New York City, the Institute of International Finance, and the Columbia Business School. He serves as a director of the Federal Reserve Bank of New York, and he's going to tell us exactly what's going to happen to rates. No, he's not. And is a member of the Business Council and a director at the Council on Foreign Relations. James, welcome to the stage.
Fortunately, I'm not on the rate-setting committee. If I were, they'd be going up, but they're not going to go up because I'm not on it. You can't help but be moved by, sitting here as an audience member, be moved by first the enormous range of issues that have been discussed, from waste to early childhood development, diversity, inclusion, all of the causes that are out there that this group obviously feels so powerfully about. So the CED is obviously doing an amazing job, and I must say it's my first exposure, and I've been really touched. What I've been particularly touched by is not just the identification of the issues, but the enthusiasm the leadership has had about doing something about them. And I was touched most early in the night. My wife is not with me because she's taking a yoga and meditation exam tonight. And there are advantages in this. I will get a yoga lesson for free at home, but I was very touched by this idea of taking yoga and meditation into the workforce, which I think I'm going to take back to the office if I may. Along the way, of course, I'm here to want to introduce my great friend, Ronald Hanley. Let me start firstly by thanking him, because being a banker, I thank the people who pay for the electricity in our buildings. Ron's organization pays for our electricity. He runs a $2.6 trillion asset management company. For those of you who generally don't deal in trillions, it's a lot. He does it with extraordinary skill. He's one of the world's largest asset managers. I won't read you his bio, it's in the book, but needless to say, he's accomplished on that side. Our relationship goes back 3 decades, at least. We were at that consulting firm, co-heads of 2 of the practices. I was running securities, he was running asset management, and not coincidentally, perhaps this evening, Deanna was running insurance. So you have 3/4 of the leadership team here from 3 decades ago. And it's funny how life moves along. I've learned then a tremendous amount from Ron, including at a trip to New Orleans for one of those sort of get-together deals, how to play a washboard in one of the bars in New Orleans. But he's taught me so much. He's obviously extremely sharp. He brings a searching curiosity, but he's managed to stay extraordinarily humble and down to earth as a leader. And I think that's why people like working for him, why he was successful at Mellon Corporation, Mellon Bank, and has been so successful as vice chair of State Street. He serves on the board of Unum. He serves on the board of Rhode Island Commerce Corporation and a number of other institutions. His self-effacing way should not deceive the fact he is a powerful force. He gets stuff done, and he's committed to numerous educational, medical, and other community groups, some of which intersect with a lot of what's been discussed tonight. More recently, those of you who watched the news at all, a couple of months ago, when the statue of the little girl appeared at the bottom of Wall Street, and the Fearless Girl statue, and Ron was part of the team spearheading that program, and it was placed in front of the bronze bull, the oversized bronze bull on the bottom of Manhattan, this little girl staring it down, and it was a great symbol of what can be achieved And I think the fact, I don't know where the city ended up, I know there was a debate whether they kept it or not, Ron will tell us, but I thought it was emblematic of Ron's style, the expression of this very powerful view delivered through a very disarming vehicle. Anyway, as a friend, a fellow traveller in business, Ron is someone I deeply respect and admire and have done, as I say, for 3 decades. He's certainly a deserved winner of the CED Leadership Award in recognition of his exceptional support of the research and outreach programs. Thank you and welcome, Ron O'Hanley.
Thank you, James. And I'm glad that you did tell people about the washboard, because if you didn't, I was going to. And he really did play the washboard. So if ever anybody wants to know anything about James, he's a street musician. And that street was Bourbon Street. I want to thank everybody. I want to thank everybody for turning out for this. It's a real honor to be here. It's an honor to be with all the other people that have been just so recognized today. It's an honor and it's humbling. I want to thank CED, but what I really want to thank are the people that made it possible for me, because no one of us gets this award on our own. We all stand on the shoulders of giants. Many of my giants are here in the room. Deanna's one of them. I think Deanna did her first study at McKinsey with me, and then I've got all of my colleagues from State Street here, my friends from Unum, so this is an award that really should go to them as much as me. I want to talk a little bit today about really about CED and why CED is so important, and why whether you're part of CED, you ought to be thinking about some of the things that CED does. I got involved with CED actually from another member of that McKinsey diaspora who asked me to come and join here, Lenny Mendoza. And I was drawn by the fact of what you've heard here. You know, what a great institution. It played a pivotal role in the Marshall Plan, played a pivotal role in setting up Bretton Woods, and really played a pivotal role in the World Bank, and really set a framework for how the world was going to operate in the post-war structure. And in fact, in the ashes of World War II, government had enlisted the aid of business to figure this out, right? To come forward, help us figure out what to do when this war is over, and how do we actually think about rebuilding the world, and what's the United States role going to be in that. The second reason I became involved, though, and what I'd like to urge of you, is that I think it's very important as business leaders here that we become engaged. And that doesn't mean necessarily that you need to be drawn into a political fray, and I think that's oftentimes the response that people say, really don't want to do that, I don't want to get involved in politics. You don't have to be. But I do think it's really important for us to bring our know-how and what we are able to do to these problems. And why is that important? Well, firstly, it's important that we have voices besides political voices out there. That's what this country has been built on, multiple voices addressing a problem and coming up with the best solution. So whether it's education, healthcare, fiscal sustainability, gender diversity, or corporate governance, we've got a voice, we've got a perspective, and that's got to be brought forward. Secondly, and maybe the pragmatic reason, listen to the skills that you just heard about today in the honorees that came before me. These are really, really smart people, and there's many more in this room. So we actually know how to get things done, and that's the second reason to get involved. The third reason, though, is that we can actually make a difference. We can actually bring a perspective that is much more long-term, that is much more tied to what's really going on in the world, and we can actually make a difference. So there are many powerful examples of what CED has done. I've given you some of them. But maybe, and people have talked about Fearless Girl, maybe I'll use that as an example. And firstly, I'd like to say that there were a lot of people that were involved in that. But I'd also like to say why we actually got involved, because we're not in the statue putting up business, right? That's not what we do. It's State Street Bank, not State Street Art Gallery. But what we are involved in is in that 2.6 trillion, we manage and steward money for a lot of retirement plans, for people saving for their kids' college, people saving for their mortgage. And so for us, it's about stewardship, right? It's not just that we manage the money, because in many cases, we are the permanent capital there as it relates to public securities. So we spend a lot of time thinking about not only how are we going to manage the money and send a bill to our clients, but how are we going to steward those assets. And that stewardship has taken on many forms over the years. Our agenda evolves, and I would agree with Deanna, things actually are getting better in certain regards. But what became apparent to us as the data got better and better and the empirical evidence became overwhelming, that we couldn't just put out principles any longer when it came to gender diversity. Right? The evidence is overwhelming that gender diverse companies, starting with the board, but including top management and including senior management, just have better long-term results. Right? Places like McKinsey and others had done studies on this. So we're going to do what we usually do, right? Which is put out a paper on it, and we'll spend a lot of time giving speeches like this, or going to different places. And a member of my team came to me and said, this is a really big deal that we're doing. We're going to come out with all this guidance. We're going to come out with these guidelines. Why don't we do something that symbolizes this? And so through a creative process that lasted a long time, and like many creative processes, it's a little bit like sausage being made. You really don't want to know what went into it. Some of the ideas that hit the cutting room floor belonged on the cutting room floor. But there was this idea of a symbol, right? This fearless girl symbol. And again, it was to underscore the point. And frankly, I thought it'll be cute. It'll be a nice thing to do. And it'll certainly underscore, but it's really about the words and what we have to say. Well, I think you all know what happened there. 12 hours, 1 billion Twitter hits. It was just an extraordinary mark, and the statue actually is permanent now in New York. But the point here... Thank you. The point here is not about, by the way, I must say, the artist, Kristen Visbel, is here tonight. Kristen, I don't know where you are, but if you could just raise your hand. Oh, I guess she stepped out. Well, that's too bad. So, but Kristen is here tonight. The point of this is that what I'm trying to say here is that business can have a multiplier effect on solving problems. And we can have a voice, we can have impact on policy issues. And like the Fearless Girl case here, it's what we do day to day. We're solving a problem, but we can extend that into not just our business problem, but public policy problems. Why do we need to do this? Because it's no longer about making money. Making money is just not enough. We're in a world of stakeholder capitalism, and that is permanent. A new generation of employees, business partners, and other stakeholders expect us to focus on a broader set of issues. They expect us to be thinking about the environment. They expect us to be thinking about the economy. They expect us to be thinking about society. So I believe we have an obligation to engage, and I would submit that that engagement and the importance of that engagement has never been more important than now. As we've heard, advances in technology are disrupting many of the assumptions we once had around industries and employment and jobs. We're witnessing the largest migration of people since the Second World War, and in fact, it may surpass that migration if things continue. Barriers are going up, reversing the post-war consensus around the global flow of capital, people, and ideas. Brexit is challenging the once sacred idea that Europe, culturally and commercially linked in peace, was better than nationalistic divisions. So we find ourselves in a world that more than ever needs us to actually solve problems, that needs us to step up, that needs us to step out of the corner office, to step out of managing the business day to day and coming forward. It's the reality of the world that we live in, and it's why I believe CED is so important. So I, for one, welcome the opportunities we have with policymakers to impart our knowledge and experience. And today's issues are just too important for us to ignore, regardless of our personal political affiliations, or regardless of that matter who's in the White House at any particular time. So with leadership and the leadership in this room comes responsibility. And just as we celebrate today, as we look back at the CED leaders who helped make the Marshall Plan and the World Bank and the IMF possible, future generations are going to ask us, how did we discharge our obligations? So like that first generation of CED leaders, I suggest that we all rise to the challenge presented by this rapidly changing environment, and let's use our voice and our mind to have a positive impact. And our stakeholders are going to expect nothing less. So again, thank you very much. You've honored me, and thank you very much, Steve.
Well, thank you, Ron, and thank you to all of you for helping to celebrate CED's 75th anniversary. This has been terrific. Many people mentioned our book, Sustaining Capitalism. Our book is on a table outside the door. Please take a copy. Please read it. Then please pass it along to somebody else to read it, because this book encapsulates all the ideas that CED has championed and all of the ideas that were expressed tonight. Thank you all for your participation. Thanks to all the speakers and the awardees. And we would welcome everybody to our Fall Policy Conference, which takes place on November 15th in Washington. We hope to see you all there. Good night, everyone. Thanks for coming.